Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So in our last episode, we explained to you why slug throwers are a terrific weapon to be used against Force users. In this episode, we're going to expand on that even more and talk about some equipment and tactics you should probably use should you choose the dangerous profession of becoming a Jedi or Sith hunter. In my line of work as a YouTuber, I have to deal with a lot of Force-using trolls almost on a daily basis. So I've had to put down my fair share of Jedi and Sith, and I did it using a technique that I co-developed with HK-47, perhaps one of the most prolific killers of Force users in the history of history. It's a really simple 4-step method which can be summarized by the terms kinetics, protection, overwhelm, and power, or K-pop as I like to call it. Now, K-pop is an extremely deadly force when it's used in the right way. It can shatter almost anyone's defenses. Although it's primarily used against Jedi and Sith, it's also very effective against non-Force users, specifically impressionable young teens from Asia. So be cautious when employing K-pop. The first letter in K-pop stands for kinetics. Now, we talked a lot about this in our last video, so check that out if you want to learn more. Today we're going to start off with the P in K-pop, which stands for protection. Plastoid composites, Duraplast, and Durasteel are some of the more common materials we see being used in armor. While they might do okay against a blaster bolt, their lightsaber resistance is relatively low, which is probably why the Emperor made Darth Vader's suit out of these materials. Much easier to keep them in check. But for those looking for the best protection money can buy, you need to head to a planet called Mandalore. The Mandalorians possess one of the strongest metals in the galaxy. It was called Beskar, or Mandalorian iron. They've used this extremely rare metal to craft ships and suits of armor for several thousands of years. It's one of the few metals that is completely resistant to lightsabers. Mandalorian smiths have been jealously guarding the secret of how they forged this iron, so it's very hard to obtain. Usually suits of armor are passed down generation to generation. Not even Jango Fett's armor was made out of Beskar. An interesting alternative to Beskar is an ore called cortosis. It wasn't as strong as Mandalorian iron, but it had the interesting ability to extinguish lightsabers upon contact. This was due to the metal's highly conductive properties. A Jedi used the Cortosis blade in an ambush against Darth Vader during the Conclave of Kessel. It forced the Dark Lord to discard his lightsaber, but in the end he managed to get hold of the sword and disable several Jedi's lightsabers. Cortosis could also be woven into armor or made into shields. The Imperial Knights of the Fel Empire used them in their gauntlets. And for those of you who don't mind pain, there's one other alternative for lightsaber resistant materials. They came in the form of an obelisk. These parasitic creatures would attach on the skin of an individual and reproduce until they covered the entire body. Removing the parasites were extremely deadly and dangerous because the obelisk would release toxins into the bloodstream of its host when it dies. They were impervious to lightsaber strikes but were susceptible to lightning attacks. It's not really the most practical armor, but if you are desperate and can handle the pain, it might be a good choice for you. So what should you do when you're dealing with Force lightning from a Sith or Dark Jedi? Well, theoretically, all you need to do is wrap yourself in some type of metal armor which can safely conduct the electricity from the Sith Lord into the ground that you're standing on. But let's say Force lightning has some magical property that can penetrate your metal suit and insulation layers. In that case, I would simply try to invest in a personal shield. Although I would use it sparingly because they emit a lot of radiation. So proper protection will increase your survivability against a Jedi or Sith, but before you can really do any damage to your enemy, you need to take down their defenses. That's where we get the O in K-pop, overwhelm. If you can overwhelm a Force user, they won't be able to use their wide range of Force abilities on you, which gets rid of their greatest advantage. A sonic detonator is perfect for the job. They come in all shapes and sizes and emit a high frequency sound that makes it impossible for your enemies to concentrate. And as a bonus, if your enemy is a Bith, their head might even explode, which is a great story to tell at dinner parties. Concussion grenades, gas grenades, and stun setting on blasters also do a great job. They're hard to avoid and block, and they have the added benefit of knocking out your opponents. As my debate coach once advised me, if you can't beat someone fairly, wait until they fall asleep, sneak into the house with a sock full of soap bars, and whack them in the face repeatedly. That's a strategy you can use in a lot of situations in life. Another great way to overwhelm a Force user is simply by employing more goons to help you, and equipping them with weapons that have a very high firing rate. The key is to keep the Jedi or Sith so overwhelmed that you can deploy the final letter in K-pop, which is P and stands for power. If you manage to sneak past the Jedi's defenses with a slug thrower, great. But why even risk the chance of missing in the first place? Powerful weapons, especially ones that do area damage, give you a much better hit ratio. And when it comes to fighting a Force user, just hitting them is half the battle. If an explosion doesn't get to them, the shrapnel and concussive force just might. And if you're in close range, directional explosives are also a great choice, so are scatter guns and flamethrowers. It's a good idea to make your weapon so powerful that not even a force shield can block it. And perhaps most importantly, when facing a Jedi or Sith, don't plan it out too much. Just kind of wing it, and make sure you're properly equipped, because if you know what your next step is going to be, most likely that force user you're facing off knows as well. As a matter of fact, in the novel Approaching Storm, a Hutt employed mentally challenged individuals to kidnap a Jedi. It was difficult for a force user to detect any aggression coming from them. Now I wish I never had a reason to invent K-pop. I hate K-pop. And the fact that K-pop is so popular today shows us just how messed up the world is. But in my line of work, I often have to analyze force users, and naturally, I sometimes antagonize them. So that's why I created K-pop. It was solely for self-defense. Anyway, last episode we asked you guys, which weapon would you use if you encountered a Jedi in the scenario that I had provided? 1,131 of you would use an automatic slug thrower, and 339 of you said you would get naked, which is actually secretly the correct answer. Now in today's poll, I want to ask you guys, what's your favorite part of K-pop? Just click on the little card in the top right corner and fill out our poll, and I'll let you guys know the results in one of our next episodes. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button so you know exactly when we upload our next video. And if you're watching this, guys, you are Generation Tech.